let's talk about the monkey on your back.
So I had a thought once, one of those questions I can ask you, Daniel. A client asked to buy a 25-hour day, and they're one of your wealthy WA clients. They've got more money than sense. Now, can you buy a 25-hour day for yourself?
Literally, no.
So then we need to invest the time that we have, and whether you're Gandhi or you're you or you're me or you're the West Australian Premier, the one thing that equalises us all is we've got exactly the same number of hours in the day.
This is very true.
It almost feels like the difference between great success, mediocre success, and not success is what you choose to do, and more interestingly, what you choose not to do.
Mm.
So you talked about the monkey, and I recall that there are 3 types of, let's call it monkey time, that they came up with in 1974, which is when the monkey idea popped out.
Mm.
And they said, well, look, there's 3 places you can invest your time. You can invest it in boss time, or if you're the boss, you invest it in board time or banker time or owner time. And although the picnic model was invented probably 40 years afterwards, that boss time has some negative immediate consequence if you don't pay attention to it. The picnic model talks about 2 types of consequences: positive immediate and negative immediate, and that's driving people's behaviour.
Yeah, so it's that we're mainly driven by what's immediately going to be pleasurable or bad for us, and we make decisions based around that.
Yep. So that's one category of time that the monkey people talked to. That you've got this boss time, or if you're the boss, board time or banker time. You've always got someone there who outranks you and can make your life immensely unpleasurable if you don't pay attention to them.
Yeah.
The second category, which probably talks to it being 1974 when this idea came out, is what they call the system time, which is peer-driven. So you've got colleagues at the same level as you. They might be other business owners. They might be other managers or general managers. Or it could be systems that you as the business owner have put in place. So you've put a system in to do performance reviews once every 6 months.
Yep.
And that system time, instead of having a negative immediate consequence if you don't pay attention to it, it is a little less certain. It has a negative consequence, but it's future rather than immediate.
Okay, so I'm sort of seeing that this might be, system time might be something that's important to pay attention to, but there's no immediate picnic, positive or negative effect.
Yep, so it's future rather than immediate.
Gotcha.
And then there's the third clump, which the monkey author divided into 2 chunks. So time engaging with your team, so team member time, and free discretion time, which is when you're doing your important but often not done future work, creating a strategy, thinking about performance, thinking about do we need to have 25-hour days, or can we do what we need to do in 8-hour days? And the monkey is around that team member time and how you engage your team to make sure that the team are doing the best work that you're asking and paying for them to do, rather than them hooking the monkey onto your back on the way past and you get to do their work for them.
Yeah. It's that's really interesting. And I sort of relate this back because I know a lot of people are probably familiar with the, when we break time or effort into a quadrant, and we say, important and urgent, important, not urgent, not important, not urgent, and then busy work. And initially, when you were just explaining that, I was thinking, the monkey on your back is going to fall into that busy work space, or the member time, team member time could fall into that busy work space. But there's a number of things that where this crosses over. I think about the picnic model tends to be things that are probably some important and urgent, and some that if you're not onto it, you'll end up doing busy work, perceiving it as being important and urgent, firefighting maybe. From your system time, it's the idea of if you don't do anything around the system time, in the future it'll be negative, is probably falling into that important but not urgent. But then as well, when we talk about team member time, if team member time is just team members putting the monkey on your back, then it becomes kind of very short term. It almost becomes busy work for you in a bad way.
And that talks to one of the problems that we all have as leaders, which is when we're doing that free discretion strategy time, sometimes doesn't pay off, and it's usually really hard to explain to your peers, to the banker, to the boss, to the team, what it is you're actually doing. Well, I'm staring out the window thinking about what we'll look like at the end of 2023. Well, I've got a monkey to stick on your back because we have an urgent problem now with the shipping of our self-sealing stem bolts.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, when most people look at that, they say, oh, well, that dealing with that problem is the best thing you can do to help the business be better. When in fact, you know, can often be giving the team member the authority to resolve the problem, and you staring out the window might be the best thing for the business in the medium and the long term.
Yeah, I actually had a very similar conversation recently with a client around that. And, you know, I think freight, if you're shipping anything or getting any supplies shipped in with any kind of volume, you know, you're relying on sea freight, and therefore you currently have a freighting problem that like everybody does, whether it's the price of that or the fact that you just can't get a spot to get your sea container of whatever it is into the country. The reality is there is a good process to follow and to continue to follow to make sure that you've, you know, protected your margins, that you're pricing appropriately, that you're constantly trying the different avenues to see if you can get, you know, a spot, so to speak. And it's not really the business owner or the senior leader's role to do that. It's more to make sure that monkey doesn't end up on their back because they're perceived as the only people who can do something about that. And the reality is that they need to make sure very early on that they've got their process in place, they've delegated it to someone who's clearly, you know, competent. There are plenty of competent people in every business, and that's a routine that's stuck to. Because if you're stuck on that right now, are you like you said, are you thinking about next year or the year after? Are you thinking 3 and 5 year plans? I have very much the same thing myself. You know, if I'm looking at immediate opportunities, I quite often get caught up in something that's fantastic. I need to deal with that right now. But I also need to appreciate that it might seem like a good idea for me to find 5 more people that I need to have a chat with, or about services we can offer. But I actually need to be thinking about what's my long-term plan, what's my strategic goals. You do need to be staring out the window, right?
And 3 of those services make 90% of your revenue, and the other 6 don't. You have to make the decision of, well, is that the way it's meant to be, or is our business need to be less reliant on those 3 and build out one of the 6? Yeah,
I had another. Actually, it's really interesting when you talk about that, and I think about strategy and vision. I spoke to a general manager of business, and he's not the owner of the business. He took on the role of running this business, and he went to the board and said, "There's a section of our business, although it feels very important that we play in that area, it's not our core competency, and also the ability to make a good margin on that is difficult because it's very high labor content, and a lot can go wrong in a very high labor content. But the other part of their business is very machine content driven, so it's predictable, stable, and it's profitable. And you know, it's originally why they got into business." And he virtually said to the board, we need to drop this. You might perceive that we're making money, but the reality is that it's hard. It takes up a lot of space. Yes, you've invested money in setting up that space, but we've got a return on that well and truly now. But the other reality is there's a whole bunch of people in that space we compete against who won't give us work in the other space, in the machining or machine-based space. Now, we could make far more money out of doing that if they knew we weren't competing with them. So they stopped. He convinced them. He stopped. And within a few years, all of their competitors were giving them all their overflow work in that machine space. And they're bigger than they've ever been before, plus the extra space in their factory they've used to expand into. So they didn't have to move. They managed to increase their revenue and their size dramatically, but they didn't have to move location.
Well, Elliot Goldratt's dead, so The Goal is a book that needs a sequel to the sequel. It sounds like you and that general manager have written it. Glass case example, but being a bit more immediate, the Gemba can be a source of monkeys. So I'm not suggesting for a moment that you don't go out into the workplace and authentically engage your team, but I am suggesting that you keep your eyes peeled for the monkeys. So how's it going versus how's it coming along? How's it going? Well, there's a monkey with that one. How's it coming along? Is more a debrief. Is there something I can do to help you do it faster? Then brings the monkey back.
Yeah.
So being very careful in engaging your team and setting their expectations rather than managing their problems. And the worst thing you can ever do is ask someone to send you an email, because then the monkey well and truly is on your back, and there's a stopwatch on the monkey too, because if you don't reply within 12 hours, then your team member will come and nag you.
Yeah. That's actually a really good point you make there. And I think it's there's a couple of techniques that I would apply to that situation. One being potentially if it might be something that's just been raised with you, or a question that's been asked of you, you could say, I'll get back to you, or send me an email. Or maybe instead of doing those two things, which, like you said, puts the monkey on your back, maybe you actually answer that question with a question. So they say, XYZ is not working. And like in its simplest terms, you could say, okay, well, what do you think you could do about it? And then it's immediately back with them.
So they are the 4 questions in the cue card that a leader would have if they don't know the 4 questions off by heart. What's the problem? Why is that a problem? What do you think we should do about it? Repeat that until the words "you should" doesn't come up in the sentence. And then let's do that. Then I'll check in with you later on the shift tomorrow morning, next Thursday, whenever it's appropriate.
Yes, and it's very much like the coaching kata of training within industry in terms of experimentation. It's the same type of questioning. It very much falls to the 5 whys type of questioning. It's very much looking at, how to get people to, instead of just saying what they're seeing as a symptom or what they're feeling as a symptom, is to actually get them to go, let's get closer to the root cause, because in reality, the root cause and resolving the root cause is probably much closer to them than it ever is to you as a leader.
And if it is closer to you as a leader, then you've got some deeper things that would need to work through with you.
Yeah.
But those 4 questions are simple. People have known about those 4 questions since Caesar was cruising around Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And very, very often you get into the, well, what do you think we should do about that? Well, I think you should invest more money, or you should assign more resources. That's just the monkey appearing live if you hear the words "you should." and a good leader, acknowledging the contribution. That's, yes, we can do that. Is there anything else that we could do that might be a bit more immediate?
Yep.
Or is there anything else that we can do that won't cost us the time that it will take to do that level of investment?
Yeah. Yeah.
It may take a few goes until an answer pops out that doesn't involve "you should." But once you get there, if it's half reasonable, checking in, have you, you understand the context, the purpose, the quality, the quantity, the resourcing and the time, go do it. Or if you don't have some resources, well, where can we get that from? So the same 4 questions, what's the problem with resourcing? Why is that a problem? What do you think we should do about it? Let's do that then.
Yeah. And yeah, that whole Seaport model, I think, is sometimes how they summarize the acronym for it. That whole, let's get all of the context together and make sure that we've clarified what we're trying to achieve is really, really important. As a conversation for a leader to have with someone who can go and take the action, I think it's really important because it does provide them with a large amount of empowerment from my point of view, because you've just coached them on how they can see how they're empowered to do it, as opposed to, constantly being just receiving, bad news, I suppose you could call it.
And many of us have many scars over the year, and I'll share one with you and the audience. Empowerment, I always feel, is the wrong word. That empowerment means that there's power involved, and in traditional management sense, power is the illegitimate use of authority. It's what gets us into the awful sexual harassment cases that we have in the mining industry at the moment. So I usually use the synonym authority. I give you the authority to do the work of your role. And my job as a leader is to remove the roadblocks that stop you from being awesome. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. And I liken that to giving authority is almost a part of even servant leadership, which is a big part of operational capability culture, where I think it's tough, especially if your identity as a leader is attached to authority and power, of being, that point of decision making and all that kind of thing. If you struggle to let go of that because it's part of your identity, then it's very difficult to give your team the authority and to be able to actually say that, like a phrase like, well, let me help you by, I can remove roadblocks. I can make sure that, if we need to get various things done in the background to make sure that you can do what you need to do, I can go and get those things done, but I'm not going to do it myself. I'm not going to do the whole thing myself. It's very much got to be, work that helps empower them. And that's, I think, a big challenge for a lot of leaders traditionally, because that whole, like you've said, that whole 1970s mentality of, control is deeply ingrained in our culture.
Well, it's been like that for a very long time. So to snap your fingers and say it's gone, that would be short-sighted. But when you think about, you talk about in Western Australia, especially, a skills shortage. If people have a lot of options, and one of the options is that the leader does everything and allows me to do nothing. The other option is the leader gives me the authority to do the work that the leader has asked me to do, which sounds more appealing to most up-and-coming workers.
Yep. Yes,
so
definitely.
There's a selfish reason to adopt servant leadership, and the selfish reason is you attract the right people into the team who will do the right work. And our old mate, L. David Marquardt, talks about the ladder of leadership, where you tell me what to do is at the bottom rung. I talk about what I intend to do as one of the middle rungs, and then I tell you what I've done is one of the top rungs. So good leadership could be as simple as a fortnightly report where you and the leader talk about what I intend to do and what I've been doing, what are the risks and critical issues, and the monkey doesn't go anywhere. It stays with the person who has the authority to do the work.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. And it is one of the key tenets, I suppose, of, having an effective fortnightly report is that what it's doing is it's helping to engage people with the right mentality. That whole I've been doing, the result of the fortnightly report is a report that basically demonstrates that people have used the authority that they've been given and they are moving forward in a manner that supports our strategy and our plans. And they're doing their own thing. They're just keeping you in FYI'd into it. And that's really, really important. That's when things are heading in the right direction.
And perhaps that's another conversation of how you make the big leap from monkey to I've been doing, because there is a few smaller hops along the way to make that bite size rather than try and eat the elephant all at once.
It's definitely a stages of maturity for sure. And I think you'll have some people who will definitely naturally fall into a pattern of being quite advanced in, recognizing the authority they're given, and others who, through previous work experiences, have actually fallen into a very passive mindset around, I'll just wait until I'm told what to do. And that's not necessarily their fault. They're very much just fitting the mold of how they grew up, so to speak. And that's been the pattern of behaviour that they've grown accustomed to be comfortable with, even if it isn't positive for their own well-being.
So picnic, once again, we end up where we start, that if you reward people with positive immediate consequences for doing what is the right thing, and coach them with more negative immediate consequences for not doing the right thing, that virtuous circle begins to form.
Yeah. That picnic model actually becomes pretty effective if it's used to delegate authority, right?